So my guess is that you may be wondering who or what Elim is, and even why we're called Elim in the first place. Well, here at Coventry Elim, we're part of a group of churches originally named after an oasis that Moses in the Old Testament brought the people of Israel to for a time of refreshing. You can read the story in Exodus 15, where God's people have been wandering through the desert. They're desperate for water, and they arrive at an oasis called Elim, and they're refreshed. And of course, it's our hope that when anybody engages with this church, they will have this refreshing experience of God's presence. Here in the UK, there are now around about 550 Elim churches and approximately 7,000 worldwide. Elim is one of the few growing denominations in the UK, and it's part of the growing Pentecostal movement around the world. But it hasn't always been that way. Elim actually had very humble beginnings. George Jeffreys, the founder of the Elim churches, actually came from a poor mining family in South Wales. His family became Christians in the Welsh revival of 1904, and as he grew up, he felt the call of God to become a preacher and an evangelist, and eventually found himself touring the UK, holding large meetings where people would gather together, they'd be healed, they'd be filled with the Spirit, they gave their lives to Christ. And when George Jeffreys held those kind of meetings, very often before he moved on to a new city, he would plant new churches. One of those large gatherings was in the Bingley Hall in Birmingham in the early 1930s. From there, a group of Christians from the Elim churches that had sprung up in Birmingham then came to Coventry. They held some evangelistic meetings and eventually planted a small church in 1933 in Sackville Street here in Coventry. As Coventry Elim began to grow, it moved to different locations around the city. It moved to Red Lane in 1937, and then to David Road in 1959, and eventually it constructed its own building here at the Butts in 1980, when there were around about 120 people in attendance. Over the years, the church has grown numerically so that between 600 and 800 adults and children from over 70 different nations worship with us every single week, which has resulted in us now holding our Sunday services at the Belgrade Theatre, which actually is the very same site that George Jeffreys came to in 1939 to hold some tent meetings in order to support the fledgling church that had been planted in 1933. Today, Elim has churches in most of the UK towns and cities. It's actually become one of the UK's largest charities. Elim actually has an international centre in Malvern, which houses our theology college, our conference centre, our administrative offices, as well as a base for our national ministries and national leaders. And so while here at Coventry Elim, we're led by a team of elders, deacons and pastors, we also have responsibility and are accountable to Elim's national leadership team for how we lead and manage this local church. We're really grateful for those who've gone before us, but we also carry this sense of expectation and excitement for all that is ahead of us. And so we would love you to partner with us as we continue to see God's kingdom come here in Coventry.